Good morning to you. It is Monday, February 17th, what happens to be President's Day. In case you're wondering who the most athletic president is or was, well, the consensus is Gerald Ford. He played for two national championship football teams at Michigan, was a team MVP in 1934, was a frequent swimmer, runner, and tennis player. Although from what I've read, his golf game was not his strong suit. Now let's talk about the sporting conversations you can have today. The NBA All-Star Game was last night, and it was dramatically overhauled four-team format. One guy missing from this game, LeBron James, who pulled himself out to rest a nagging injury, which broke his streak of 20 consecutive All-Star games. The championship game came down to a USA versus World feel for the All-Star crown. As Shaq's OGs, they took on Chuck or Charles Barkley's global stars. Shaq's OGs won, and with Steph Curry taking home the 2025 NBA All-Star Game MVP. Expect to hear some discussion amongst your friends who talk all about basketball, whether this format is better or worse than what it was previously. Let's move on to the National Hockey League, who also happens to have a newly formatted NHL All-Star Game, calling it the Four Nations Face-Off. It's teams from Finland, Sweden, Canada, and the U.S. And there was a huge game between U.S. and Canada on Saturday night. And this heated rivalry, it began with 3 fights in the first 9 seconds. That was after the Canadian fans booed the national anthem due to pending tariffs. There was a whole nother level of intensity, but phenomenal hockey. And the U.S. pulled off a 3-1 win over Canada. And this victory sends Team USA to the championship game this Thursday. Ratings for this tournament have been great, with this U.S.-Canada game delivering most viewed non-Stanley Cup final telecast since 2019. Now, a highlight reel of just a couple of quick things happening in the world of sports. The NBA skills competition, which took place on Saturday, saw Mac McClung slam dunking over a car to make history and pull off a three-peat in the NBA dunk contest. Now, keep in mind that Mac, he plays in the NBA's G League. He's actually only played in a handful of NBA games, and his career earnings, about $132,000. He has made more on his slam dunk contest earnings at $310,000. Moving on to NASCAR. President Trump visited the Daytona 500, which started an hour earlier in an attempt to avoid weather. And the race was then later delayed by said weather 11 laps in. It finished late last night with William Byron taking home the checkered flag. Veteran driver Jimmie Johnson finished third in his Shaq-designed race car. Moving on to Cleveland. The WNBA announced that Cleveland is the next city to receive a franchise. Cleveland is already home to an NBA team, the Cleveland Cavaliers. And last but not least, number one ranked tennis player Jannik Sinner, well, he accepted a 3-month suspension stemming from positive tests last March. And fans expressed their outrage over the suspension due to what seems to be special treatment that he has received. He will not miss any majors during his suspension. He will still be available for the French Open, Wimbledon, U.S. Open, and we've already had the Australian Open. And last but not least, I want to close you out with a really great story straight from Philly on Friday. It was the Eagles Super Bowl championship parade, and Eagles fan Ryan Quigley was celebrating New Year's in New Orleans when he and his best friend and former Princeton football teammate, Tiger Betch, well, they were among the victims hit by a terrorist truck. Betch died that day, and Quigley is still recovering from his injuries, and he said that a gesture by the Eagles lifted his spirit. Quigley was on the parade route at the Eagles championship celebration on Friday when some offensive linemen spotted him and insisted he join the team that carried his wheelchair and helped him on to the team bus. And Saquon Barkley also brought him on stage during his speech. Barkley was clearly feeling the love because he saw Eagles ball boy along the side of the parade, and he picked him up over the fencing and had him join the Super Bowl victory parade with him as well. That's what we have for this week ahead. Of course, enjoy it. Happy President's Day. And if you want more than anything we talked about today, lastnightsgame.com. And of course, follow us on social media. And if you love what you hear, hit that subscribe button and don't be afraid to share us with a friend.